Milk Mike, let's talk some Resident Evil 7. We both got the game when it came out a month ago or so. Although, if you're watching this podcast 2 years from now, you're going to be like, it didn't come out last month. But that's not the point. The point is, at the time we're recording this, it came out a month ago. We both played it, both beat it, both loved it, I hope.
Well,
Uh,
I love most of it. I think that I really did enjoy the storyline to it. I really did like, being inside of a mansion again, kind of like the original Resident Evil. I like the first person aspect. I think it really added to the suspense. What I really didn't like it was the lack of characters. I didn't like the or not characters. I'm sorry, enemies. Lack of enemies. It seemed like you were fighting the same enemies over and over and over again.
I would agree with that. I think that your definition of a mansion is a little loose there, though.
Right, right. I'm a
It's more
house.
like a yeah, it's more like a Resident Evil Dead, right? It's in a cabin in the backwoods, just like Evil Dead was. People are getting possessed. The characters are almost just like Deadites, where they go back and forth between being calm and like, "Oh, please help me," and super violent. Um, you
Yeah,
know, but that almost makes for epic boss battles and not knowing whether or not you're supposed to care about the people you're fighting. Um, but yeah, I do agree that the enemies are very, very generic. I feel like they put so much work into the rest of the game that they just kind of gave up on the enemies and just like, let's just cover them in oil. That's fine.
yeah. And literally, that's what I mean. It looks like. It looks like a big oil man is running after you, and there might be one with a claw arm, and there's another one that crawls, and then there's one that's just gigantic, and that is it. Oh
Yeah,
well,
you know what would be really cool if this oil blob spit sewage.
that's what the one does, the big one.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I thought it was just bulimic because
well,
it was trying to lose weight.
no, no, no,
Huh.
no. Well, it could be. Who knows what it is? It's spitting more oil at you. I
I don't
have
know. You never take the time to talk to these things. I mean, to know who they are as things.
yeah.
I don't want to say people.
Yeah, I don't know. What they named them something in the game though, right? What were their names in the game? Uh,
Did they name them
yeah,
something?
yeah, there was something. You know, wasn't it old Resident Evil one like zombies called liquors and things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that? But not a name like that. I could have swore they had a name for their character types, but uh, it was
Cannon fodder? I don't know.
yeah. Well, I mean, essentially that's I mean, there's no personality with them. There's no zombies in the game at all. I mean, it's safe to say that this is the first Resident Evil without any zombies, right?
Yeah, and I think if you pick up a piece of lore, it says that they're all supposed to be other people that have been infected that didn't take to the infection the same way as like the boss characters did.
Right. Well, if,
You
if,
know,
if you
so
take time and read the notes and stuff, you'll start gathering information of other people that have been abducted in this home. There's like 20 or 30, and I think that's where the enemies come from, which is actually really cool. But wouldn't it have been awesome if each one had their own personality? If they're only going to put that few enemies in the game, if they could have their own personality, each one, I think that would not necessarily personality, but a separate look from the other.
yeah, and I got to be honest with you, that's exactly what I was hoping for. When I picked up a piece of lore that had several names on it of
Hmm.
people that didn't take to the infection and were turning for the worse, so to speak, I was like, oh man, that's going to be great. It's going to be like I'm going to have to fight, let's say, 18 different enemies, and they're all going to, look a little bit different, or they're going to act different or something based on their personalities. And yeah, it just turned out to be very generic enemies, which I think is the worst part of the game.
Yeah, yeah, it really was. Well, that or the final boss battle. Without giving out any spoilers, it was very anticlimactic for me. I mean, I felt like the last third of the game was just rushed. I had no problems getting through it, and I mean, it was like they gave up at the end. They just tried to rush it out.
Yeah, and speaking of the ending, I mean, whoever plays it will see how it ties into the regular Resident Evil games at the very end. but they did it so poorly and it was so unnecessary. They could have just taken that out, made
Hmm.
it a different game, or rebooted the Resident Evil series altogether, and not even gave it a 7 as far as the numbering system. I mean, and and even when you look at it released in the States, it's almost like they try to hide the number 7, in the
Yeah.
Roman numerals. And why? I mean, is it that bad to have 7 of these games? Yes. Yes, it is. They should have just taken a cue from America and be like, look, we're going to reboot Spider-Man for the 500th time, and we'll eventually get it. And, they should have just done that. They should have just went from scratch and said, you know what, we're going to reboot the Resident Evil franchise. We're going to start from scratch. Instead of trying to do a 7 and then tie it in and
Well, that's what this felt like. This felt like a giant reboot until the very end, which I mean, it still can be a reboot. I mean, obviously not as Resident Evil 7, but I mean, it's new characters. It's completely new with a tie-in at the very end that, like you said, is pointless. I mean, uh,
yeah, they could have just called it Resident Evil Origins and then thrown Ryan Reynolds in and then cover his mouth so he can't talk. He's got like arm blades, and I'm thinking of a totally different thing.
yeah,
Never mind.
that is definitely not Resident Evil. But I think the high point of the game though is the boss battles. I think that they really outdone themselves with how each boss battle was. I mean, it was so different that you were playing a guessing game on how to fight him. I remember the garage scene where he fought Daddy. Uh, it's completely insane. I took 3 or 4 tries of dying without even making any progress in the boss battle just to find out what I was supposed to do. And then you have that aha moment of, oh, this makes so much sense. Oh, this is awesome. So when you go back and play it again, it's obviously a lot easier, but you know that what to do. So it's just more dynamic that way. I mean, it makes the story flow a lot better.
Right? Yeah, the boss set pieces are amazing. Just some of the areas they happen in and the amount of space you get to try to figure out what's going on, if you should run or fight or combination of both. Um, the resources that they give you to try to figure out, okay, am I supposed to use this to do this? Um, the unpredictability of it is completely amazing. Um, I would also go as far as to say that um, there's never been a better villain than Daddy in recent memory. I mean, he's just a crazy guy that you have no idea what he's doing.
Yeah.
You have no idea what the motives are.
Uh huh.
You have no idea how to stop him. It's just incredible. They really, really nailed the boss battles.
Yeah. 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 Overall, I think that you know everybody should play this game. If you like the Resident Evil series or horror type games, definitely play this game. It's
Also, if you like to throw up, play the game in VR, I hear.
oh, I didn't even mention that. Yes, so I tried it out in VR for 15 minutes, and 10 minutes in, I'm about to throw up. But it's so immersed. I mean, it's so amazing. There's detail to everything. It's the full game. I was confused. I didn't know if it was going to be a section of the game or the full game in VR. It's actually the full game. And the problem with it is at the beginning when Mia's throwing you up the stairs. I mean, my head's thinking I'm going up some stairs or getting thrown around, but I'm really not. So my brain's like going crazy and my stomach starts turning and I start sweating. It was actually a pretty big mess. I mean, I could only get 15 minutes in and I mean, I couldn't even play the game anymore. I had to go to bed because I was just nauseous and sick. So
Yeah, I think that's actually where they got the idea for those spitting zombies, is because they played the beginning in VR. And they were like, oh, genius.
yeah, everybody's throwing up when they test this. Why don't we have an enemy like that? So
Yeah, I
uh,
can see somebody in the office getting thrown up on. They're like, I got an acid burn. Oh my god. Ah,
you're promoted. Great idea. So, but yeah,
yeah. So
highly recommended.
definitely, I would also recommend it. Aside from the low points we talked about, or the not so good points, definitely go pick it up. It's just a great game in and of itself, even if you're not a fan of Resident Evil. And the way it ties into Resident Evil, you don't have to really know anything about the story to begin with. It ties in a totally different, unexpected way. And the only one disappointment that I could pick up besides the graphics is the fact that there's no rocket launcher. I don't know why there's no rocket launcher. So if you're a fan of Resident Evil games and can't wait for the rocket launcher and infinite ammo, it's not happening.